The call came just after dusk, the kind of hour when shadows feel heavier and silence feels louder. Emily was wiping down her kitchen counter when her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the name. It was Daniel, her best friend Claire's husband. Daniel never called her. Maybe once a year on her birthday, and even then, he usually let Claire handle it. So seeing his name at that hour made her chest tighten for reasons she couldn't explain. She answered right away. His voice came through low and unsteady, as if he was trying to sound calm and failing. He said her name softly first. Then he asked if she had a minute. That alone unsettled her. Daniel was normally confident, direct, and quick with his words. Now he sounded like a man afraid to breathe too loud. She stepped to the window, looking out at the streetlights blinking to life. She told him she was listening. He paused. Not for a second. For several long breaths. Then he told her he was worried about Claire. Emily froze. A heavy coldness crawled up her back. She asked if Claire was hurt. He said no, not physically, but something had changed in her over the last few weeks, something he couldn't explain, something he didn't want to scare anyone with. He tried to laugh, but it didn't land. It sounded more like a crack in his voice than humor. Emily asked what he meant. Daniel said Claire had been distant, quiet, almost forgetting conversations they had just had. She would stare at the door some evenings as if waiting for someone who never arrived. She was waking up in the early mornings, shaking, but refusing to talk about it. Emily listened, gripping the edge of the counter. She hadn't seen Claire for almost 2 weeks. Work had pulled her in every direction, and their usual coffee meetups kept getting postponed. Now she regretted every cancellation. She asked Daniel why he was calling her instead of Claire's family. He said he had tried, but Claire insisted she was fine. He didn't want to break her trust or make things worse. But tonight, something shifted. He said she had been sitting on the living room floor, holding an old photograph, staring at it as if she didn't recognize her own face. When he asked her what was wrong, she whispered, "I think something is coming." Emily felt her palms sweat. She asked what Claire meant by coming. Daniel said she didn't explain. She just went quiet and refused to speak for almost an hour. He didn't want to panic, and he didn't want to imagine the worst. He only knew Emily had always been the one person Claire opened up to when she shut herself off from the world. Then he admitted something that made Emily's pulse quicken. He said he found a note, a small one, folded, hidden under Claire's pillow. He didn't want to read it, but felt he had to. The note said only one sentence. "I don't know how much more I can keep from them." Emily swallowed hard. She asked who them could possibly mean. Daniel whispered that he didn't know, but Claire wouldn't tell him. The room around Emily felt still, too still, as if the air itself was listening. She told Daniel she would come by tomorrow morning before work. She would talk to Claire. She would try to get her to open up. Daniel exhaled with relief, though his voice still trembled. He thanked her in a way that sounded heavier than simple gratitude. After they hung up, Emily stood in her quiet kitchen, staring at the dark window. Something was wrong. Not just worry wrong. Something deeper. She replayed the question Daniel asked her near the end of the call, the one that had clung to her long after the phone went silent. He asked if Claire had recently told her anything strange, anything out of the ordinary, anything about feeling followed. Emily hadn't. Claire had said nothing. But now, thinking back, she remembered the last time they talked in person, almost 3 weeks ago. They had stood beneath the old maple tree outside Class house. Claire had looked over her shoulder twice during their conversation. When Emily teased her about being jumpy, Claire just forced a smile and said she hadn't been sleeping well. At the time, Emily brushed it off. Now she felt a sinking in her chest. She wondered what had changed, what Claire had seen, what she was hiding, and why she was scared to speak. Right then, Emily felt an urge to call her back, even though it was late. But she hesitated. Something told her Claire wouldn't pick up. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street, its headlights sweeping across her window like a searching beam. Emily watched until it turned the corner. Her heart wouldn't settle. Something inside her whispered that whatever was happening in that house was only beginning. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. She turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dim hallway, feeling a quiet dread that she couldn't shake. Tomorrow's conversation with Claire might reveal something she wasn't ready to hear. And she could sense it wasn't going to be simple. Not at all. Emily woke before sunrise, long before her alarm. She lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of her house, trying to calm the uneasy rhythm of her breathing. Sleep had been thin and restless. Her mind kept drifting back to Daniel's voice, the fear buried beneath every word, and to Claire's unreadable silence. She finally got up, made coffee she barely tasted, and left her house earlier than she needed to. The air outside was cool and pale, the kind of morning that usually helped her clear her thoughts. But today, it only deepened the knot in her stomach. When she turned onto Clare and Daniel's street, she slowed the car. Their house looked the same as always. Quiet. Still. Too still. She parked, hesitating for a breath before stepping out. As she walked toward the door, she noticed something odd. The curtains in the front window were closed all the way. Claire didn't do that. She always let the morning light in. Before she could knock, the door opened. Daniel stood there, tired and unshaven, the weight of a sleepless night written all over him. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said Claire was awake, but not talking much. Emily stepped inside. The house felt heavy, as if the air had thickened overnight. A faint smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, but the room itself was dim. Claire sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She looked up when Emily entered. Her eyes were distant, but they softened for a brief moment. She whispered a small greeting. Emily sat across from her. Daniel stood nearby, unsure whether he should stay or give them space. Claire glanced at him, then quietly asked if she could speak to Emily alone. Daniel hesitated, but he nodded and stepped out of the kitchen. When the room was quiet again, Emily leaned forward, speaking gently. She asked how Claire was feeling. Claire shrugged, staring at her untouched coffee. Emily tried again, reminding her that she was there for whatever she needed to say. For a moment, Claire didn't answer. Then she reached into the pocket of her sweater and pulled out the photograph Daniel had mentioned. She slid it across the table. Emily looked down. It was a picture of Claire from years ago, maybe college days. She stood in a park beside a friend Emily didn't recognize. Everything about the photo was ordinary, except Claire's face. Emily frowned, confused. She asked what she was supposed to notice. Claire whispered that she didn't remember when the picture was taken. She didn't remember the place. She didn't remember the woman beside her. She didn't remember owning that sweater back then. Emily felt a slow chill run through her arms. She asked if the photo could have been shared by a family member or an old friend. Claire shook her head. She said the picture wasn't printed on normal paper. It felt new. Emily picked it up. The edges were crisp, the colors sharp. It did look recent, strangely recent. She asked where Claire found it. Claire pointed toward the hallway, inside their bedroom, under her pillow. Just like the note. Emily swallowed. She kept her voice steady, asking if Claire had talked to anyone unusual or met new people or felt unsafe in any specific way. Claire hesitated. Then she said she felt watched. Emily forced herself not to react. She asked what exactly made her feel that way. Claire's fingers trembled slightly around the coffee mug. She said, sometimes, at night, she heard faint knocking from inside the walls. She heard someone whisper her name outside the bedroom door, even when Daniel was asleep beside her. She saw a shadow slipping across the hallway, even with all the lights on. Emily glanced toward the doorway where Daniel kept pacing back and forth, listening but trying not to intrude. She told Claire that she and Daniel could help if they understood more, but Claire shook her head quickly, almost in panic. She said she didn't want to involve him. Emily asked why. Claire lowered her voice. She said, the whispers didn't call anyone else's name, just hers. Emily reached across the table, placing her hand over Claire's. Her voice stayed soft as she asked if Claire knew who might be behind the photo or the note. Claire finally looked up. Her eyes shimmered with fear. She said she thought it was someone from her past, someone she had tried to forget, someone who hadn't forgotten her. Then she stopped speaking altogether, as if she had already said too much. She took her hand back and wiped her eyes. Before Emily could ask more, a sudden knock echoed through the front hallway. But sharp. Unexpected. Daniel's footsteps froze. Emily and Claire looked at each other. Claire's face drained of color. She whispered one word, barely audible. Again. The knock came a second time. Measured. Too familiar for Claire's liking. Emily's pulse quickened as Daniel moved slowly toward the front door, unsure whether to open it. Emily stood, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on her. Something was waiting on the other side, something that had come before. Daniel paused at the door, his hand hovering above the knob. The house felt silent in a way that made every breath sound too loud. Emily stood behind him, tense, while Claire remained frozen in the kitchen doorway. The knock didn't come again. Whoever, or whatever, wasn't impatient. It felt intentional, almost careful. Daniel finally called out, asking who was there. No answer. He unlocked the door slowly, opening it only a few inches at first. Morning light spilled across the entryway. No person stood on the porch, no car idled nearby, only quiet. But something was there. A small white envelope lying perfectly centered on the welcome mat. Daniel stared at it. Emily stepped closer. Claire stayed back, gripping the wall as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. The envelope had no name, no writing, no marks of any kind, just plain white. Daniel asked if anyone was expecting a delivery. Emily shook her head. Claire whispered a faint no. Daniel bent down slowly and picked it up. The paper felt heavier than normal, thick and cold from the morning air. Emily suggested opening it inside. Daniel agreed. He shut the door, locked it, and carried the envelope into the living room. They all gathered around the coffee table. Even the quiet hum of the refrigerator felt louder now. Daniel slipped a finger under the flap. For a moment, he hesitated, looking at Claire. She nodded, though her hands trembled at her sides. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph, and this time the image made Emily's heart drop. It was Claire again, but not from college, not from years ago. This photo was from last week. Claire stood outside a grocery store, holding a paper bag, looking over her shoulder. Emily remembered that day. They had talked on the phone while Claire was shopping. Claire had mentioned she felt someone was following her, but thought maybe she was imagining it. Now, the picture proved she wasn't. Daniel's voice cracked as he asked where this came from. Claire didn't answer. She sank onto the couch, covering her mouth. Emily picked up the photo gently. The angle was taken from behind Claire, as if someone had stood across the parking lot watching her. The focus was perfect. Too perfect. She asked if Claire had noticed anyone nearby that day. Claire nodded slowly. She said there had been a man near the entrance. Tall, wearing a dark jacket, talking on a phone, but never actually moving his lips. She thought maybe he was an employee. Emily exchanged a worried look with Daniel. She asked Claire why she hadn't mentioned this sooner. Claire said she didn't want to sound paranoid. Nothing real, nothing to fear. But now she couldn't deny it anymore. Daniel set the envelope aside and took a long breath. He asked Claire again if she knew anyone from her past who might hold a grudge, anyone who could be doing this. Claire didn't answer right away. Then she said a name. It slipped out so softly that Emily almost didn't hear it. Michael. The way she said it. Slow. Careful. Almost ashamed. Made Daniel stiffen. He asked who Michael was. Emily asked too. Claire looked down at her hands. She said Michael was someone she knew before she met Daniel, someone she had ended things with, someone who didn't let go easily. Daniel stepped back slightly, as if the air had shifted between them. He asked what Michael had done. Claire said he wasn't violent, just obsessive, too attached. He always wanted to know where she was, who she talked to, what she did every day. She ended things because she felt smothered. Emily asked if Michael had ever threatened her. Claire said no. Not directly. But on the day she broke things off, he told her something she never forgot. He said he always knew how to find her, even if years passed. Emily felt the sting of those words settle deep in her chest. Daniel paced slowly, running a hand through his hair. He asked why Claire never told him about Michael. Claire said she didn't want old things to cast a shadow over her new life. She thought it was long behind her. Emily understood the instinct, even if it complicated things now. She asked Claire if she truly believed Michael was behind the notes and photos. Claire didn't answer. Instead, she asked a quiet question that made Emily's breath catch. What if it's not just him? Emily waited. Claire swallowed hard. She said that when she heard the whispers at night, it didn't sound like just one voice. It sounded like more. Soft, overlapping murmurs, like people trying not to be heard. Emily felt a tremor race up her spine. Daniel said they needed to call someone. Maybe the police, maybe a private investigator, maybe anyone who could understand what was happening. But Claire shook her head quickly. She said calling the police would make things worse. She didn't explain why. She just repeated it, voice trembling. Emily reached for her hand, trying to calm her, but Claire suddenly stiffened, looking past her toward the living room window. Her eyes widened. She whispered Emily's name. Daniel turned. Emily turned. A figure stood across the street. Still, facing the house, not moving. Emily felt her pulse hammer against her ribs. And then the figure stepped back into the shadows and disappeared. Emily exhaled shakily. Claire said one thing, her voice barely holding together. "I told you, they're watching." Daniel rushed to the window, but the street was empty. Just soft morning light drifting across quiet lawns and parked cars. No figure, no movement, nothing that explained what they had seen. Emily stepped closer, scanning every driveway, every corner. Her heart wouldn't settle. She knew what she saw. Claire knew too. Daniel locked the door again, double-checking it, then checking it a second time. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place echoed through the room. Claire sank onto the edge of the couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders, even though the house wasn't cold. Emily sat beside her, speaking quietly, telling her they would figure this out. But Claire's eyes kept flickering toward the window as if expecting the figure to return. Daniel finally joined them. He looked tired in a way that felt deeper than just lack of sleep. He said they needed a plan. They couldn't pretend nothing was happening anymore. Someone was watching Claire. Someone was leaving things at their door. Someone knew where she lived, where she shopped, and how to get close without being seen. Emily agreed. She told Claire they all needed to talk honestly, with nothing held back. No secrets, no half-truths. Claire hesitated. Then she nodded. Emily asked gently what exactly made her think this was more than Michael. Claire's breathing tightened. She told them that 3 nights ago, before the note and before the first photo, she woke up suddenly, sometime after midnight. She felt someone standing near the bed. Not Daniel. Someone taller. Someone still. She didn't see a face. She only saw the shape, a dark outline just beyond the edge of the dresser. When she blinked, the shape was gone. She convinced herself it was a dream. But the next morning, she found the bedroom window slightly open. She swore she had locked it before going to bed. Emily felt her skin prickle. Daniel's jaw clenched. He asked why she didn't tell him. Claire looked down and whispered that she didn't want him to think she was losing her mind. Emily touched her hand again, telling her she wasn't imagining this. Something was happening and they needed to be ahead of it. Daniel stood up suddenly, pacing the room. He said they could install cameras, front yard, backyard, inside the house if needed. They could set up alarms, change the locks, check every entry point. He was already making a mental list. But Claire shook her head. She said she didn't want cameras. She didn't want recordings. She didn't want anything that might provoke them. Emily asked quietly, "Claire, who is them?" Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words sat heavy behind her lips. She finally said she wasn't sure. She only knew she felt more than one presence, more than one pair of eyes. Emily tried to stay calm, but every part of her was tightening with worry. Before anyone could speak again, a sudden noise thudded from upstairs. All 3 froze. It wasn't a small sound, not the creak of a settling house. It was a heavy step, a footstep. Claire grabbed Emily's arm. Daniel straightened, staring at the ceiling. Emily whispered Daniel's name, asking if anyone else was in the house. He said no. They were alone. Another step. Soft, but clear. Daniel moved toward the stairs, slow and cautious. Emily followed behind him, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Claire reluctantly got up and trailed them, her hand shaking along the railing. The 3 of them climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. At the top, the hallway stretched out in both directions, 2 bedroom doors on the left, a bathroom and guest room on the right. Everything looked normal. Undisturbed. Daniel motioned for them to stay behind him as he checked the master bedroom first. Nothing out of place. Closet empty. Window locked. He checked the second bedroom. Same. No movement. No sound. Finally, he opened the guest room door. That's when Emily saw it. On the nightstand beside the neatly made bed lay another envelope. White. Identical to the one left on the porch. Daniel stepped inside slowly, picked it up, and held it for a moment without opening it. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. He tore it open. Inside was another photograph. But this one wasn't of Claire. It was of Emily, taken sometime that morning. She was stepping out of her car, walking toward Daniel and Claire's front door. Emily's stomach dropped. Her legs felt weak beneath her. Daniel looked at her in shock. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. Emily stared at the photo. The angle wasn't random. Whoever took it had been close enough to see her clearly. She whispered that she hadn't noticed anyone. No car, no shadow, nothing. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Daniel asked what they were dealing with now. What kind of person watched not just Claire, but anyone who entered the house? Emily tried to swallow the rising fear. Her voice was barely steady when she said they needed to open the envelope again in case something else was inside. Daniel checked. There was one more item. A thin slip of paper. He unfolded it. Only 3 words were written on it. She's not alone. Daniel looked at Claire. Claire looked at Emily. The room went cold. And Emily felt, for the first time, that whatever darkness was circling them had widened its reach. Daniel held the small slip of paper between his fingers, as if it might burn him. Emily stared at the words again. She's not alone. The sentence pressed into her mind like a slow, cold weight. It didn't say who she was, Claire or her. Claire stepped back from the doorway, clutching her arms, breathing quick and shallow. Emily moved toward her, guiding her to sit on the edge of the guest bed. Daniel shut the door softly, as if noise might make things worse. He paced once, twice, then leaned against the dresser, his face pale, trying to make sense of it all. Emily asked him to sit too. They needed calm. They needed clarity. But calm felt impossible in that moment. Claire kept whispering that she never wanted this to spread to anyone else. She kept saying she didn't want Emily dragged into something she didn't understand. Emily told her she was already in it, from the moment Daniel called her, from the moment she answered. Claire leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her fingers shaking. She told them that months ago, long before the notes, long before the whispers, she started feeling like something was following her. Not every day, just certain evenings, especially near dusk. She would feel a presence behind her when walking to her car after work. She would catch a shadow slipping behind a tree. She would hear footsteps stop when she turned around. She brushed it off, blaming stress, long hours, exhaustion. Daniel looked pained hearing all of it. He asked why she never told him. Claire said she didn't want to worry him over what felt like nothing at the time. Emily understood the instinct, even if it hurt now to realize how long Claire had been dealing with this alone. Claire continued. She said it wasn't until a week ago, when the first photo appeared under her pillow, that she realized it wasn't her imagination anymore. Claire hesitated. Then she said she believed Michael wasn't acting alone. She believed he had help, or had told others about her. Or maybe someone else from her past had joined him. Daniel shook his head, confused and terrified. He kept saying none of this made sense. Who would go this far? Why target Emily? Why stand outside their house? Why leave photos inside the home? Emily tried to think through it, keeping her voice calm. She said the photo of her proved one thing clearly. Whoever was watching wasn't just focused on Claire anymore. They were expanding their circle, watching anyone connected. A sudden creak sounded from down the hallway. All three turned. It was faint, soft. Not a footstep this time, more like weight shifting somewhere in the house. Daniel whispered that he had checked everything. Every room. Every corner. Emily suggested they go downstairs together and stay in one visible space. No more splitting up. No more walking the house alone. They made their way down the stairs slowly, each step echoing through the quiet air. The living room felt tense, the kind of room that held its breath. Emily stood near the window, but didn't look outside right away. Part of her was afraid of what she might see staring back. Daniel grabbed his phone. He said he was calling someone, maybe the police, maybe a friend, maybe anyone. Claire stepped forward quickly and pulled the phone from his hand. Her voice broke. She begged him not to call. She said if he did, things would get worse. Much worse. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. Emily asked, gently but directly, how she could possibly know that. Claire looked from Emily to Daniel, her expression a mixture of fear and something else, something she had been holding back. She said she had once confronted Michael months after their breakup. He had shown up near her workplace, standing at the edge of the parking lot. He didn't approach her. He only watched. When she finally demanded he leave her alone, he told her she didn't understand what she was involved in. He told her she wasn't the only one being watched. And he told her something she never repeated until now. It's not just me you need to fear. There are others, and they notice everything. Emily felt a flicker of dread at those words. Daniel looked stunned. He asked Claire why she never told him that part. Claire said she didn't want to sound paranoid, and at the time she didn't fully believe Michael. She thought he was only trying to scare her. Emily asked one final question. If he said there were others, did he ever tell you what they wanted? Claire closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She nodded. Slowly. She said Michael once whispered that they didn't want to hurt her. Not physically, not directly. They wanted something else. Something she had without realizing. Emily and Daniel waited, breathless. Claire whispered, barely audible. They want me to remember. Emily's heart jolted. She asked, remember what? Claire shook her head, fear trembling in every word. I don't know. I only know they're waiting for something I forgot. Before Emily could respond, a faint tapping came from outside the living room window. 3 slow taps. Daniel stepped toward the curtains. Emily grabbed his arm to stop him, but he gently pulled away. He whispered that they had to know. He pulled the curtain open. No one stood there, but something rested on the porch railing. Another envelope. White. Perfect. Waiting. And Claire whispered behind them, her voice cracking through the quiet. It's starting again. The morning light outside felt dimmer, as if the day itself had shifted. Emily realized nothing about this was ending soon. Something deeper was coming. Something they weren't ready for. And it was already too close.